Because this is a message that Congress has to hear and has to hear often. You can be a hero by cutting the research budget this year, and the economic damage that does, doesn't play out in the next election, but it plays out in the decades to come. It's almost a design failing of democracy, that all of the political incentives are near term, and that causes us to systematically underinvest in things with long-term payoffs, like federally funded research. And so making sure that everyone who works in these buildings here understands that those investments pay off not only 20 years from now, but will pay off in the sort of startup operations you're hearing about today.
We believe, Chris and I understand that the value of science in keeping America a competitive place in a global economy is at the forefront. And we want to make sure that we do everything that enhances the chances that science is honored and esteemed. I also would say, perhaps as an aside, that in my view, science gives the opportunity for policymakers like me to have better answers to difficult questions. So not only is this beneficial to our economy, but it's beneficial to our understanding of the world, so that decisions that we make have more value and have greater consequence, better consequence to the citizens we represent.
Thank you, Jerry, for being a good partner in the Competitiveness Caucus, something that we launched because we saw there was not one area to focus on all the different components of competitiveness globally, to look at tax, trade, intellectual property, innovation, immigration, other policy areas that if we don't get them right, we can reasonably predict that the United States will not be as secure and prosperous and promising a country as it's been. And federal investment in R&D is an absolutely linchpin piece of our being a competitive society going forward.
When I joined the university community, I had no idea the depth and breadth of the science that was happening at most universities, covering essentially all topics of inquiry. And what was particularly surprising to me was how commercially relevant so many of these inventions are. And a surprising number of those turn into products that are heading towards the market that will either save or improve people's lives. There were nearly 1,000 new startups created last year based on research emerging from the American universities, according to Autumn. But it's easy to hear those numbers and not necessarily have them have context. Because each one of those companies, if they succeed, will be something that you will all and your children and your children's children will be using in everyday life, and sometimes may actually save their lives.
So Silatronix was co-founded back in 2007 by my collaborator Bob West on the premise of making safer, higher performance lithium-ion batteries. So you probably all know about all the problems of your lithium-ion batteries dying. You know about the flammability problems of the Boeing Dreamliner shutdown. These problems of both safety and performance become increasingly worse as one thinks about the rapid increase in electrification, rapid increases in the use of hybrid and electric vehicles, and of course everyone wants a vehicle that can be charged in 5 or 10 minutes instead of 5 hours. So all of these limitations come from the fact that in lithium-ion batteries, there's a liquid called an electrolyte that moves the lithium ions back across between the two electrodes. So Silatronix was founded on the premise of replacing the existing electrolytes, which have been the same basic chemical composition since 1991, when the lithium-ion battery was invented, and replacing that with a new set of compounds that are based on incorporating the element silicon into the lattice. And so this is where Silatronix, the name, comes from. So Silatronix early stage came from a NIST Advanced Technology program for my collaborator Bob West. That program ended. I had been funded from the National Science Foundation. We partnered up to form the company, and we got an SBIR grant from NSF back in 2007. It was phase 1 and phase 2, basically launched the company. Like most startups, we had some trouble times along the ways. And actually at a critical point then, the Office of Naval Research, ONR, stepped in. And that ONR provided funding to partner us with a military battery manufacturer and also provided us with a motivation to develop another set of molecules, another set of compounds rather than our first set. And those compounds turned out to be home runs. So especially over the last few years, we've developed a series of compounds that do improve both the performance and safety profile for lithium-ion batteries. Those characteristics have been validated by essentially all of the world's major battery manufacturers, and we are now moving that toward the next stage of commercialization. So we currently have a partnership with Hitachi Chemical, for example, in Japan. Within the U.S., we've got a partnership sponsored again by ONR to partner with a company, Qualion, to qualify one of our electrolytes for incorporation into the MH-60 Seahawk helicopter. This is roughly a $1 billion market for the kinds of chemical compounds that we're talking about. We think we can capture maybe a third of that.